Welcome back to Story Recaps. Today I'm going to explain the movie, Against the Sun, released in the year 2014. In the year 1942, to avenge what happened at Pearl Harbor, the U.S. Navy is ready to attack Japan by sending torpedo bombers and fighter planes to the South Pacific. On January 16, the pilot and Major Dixon, Bomber Tony, and radioman Gene, on patrol mission, when they find themselves separated from the other aircraft and unable to maintain their hold. Dixon thinks they should head back to their carrier, but Gene realizes they are out of reception, and they are running low on fuel. Tony drops a bomb into the ocean to gain altitude, but it doesn't help much, and since they still can't get communications going, Dixon decides he'll make an emergency landing, before they lose all fuel and crash. The plane lands safely on the water, and Dixon comes out with his life jacket on, dragging the life raft behind him, but his men are not doing so well. They have trouble leaving their seats and almost drown, only managing to get out at the last second, meaning they will not be able to get their luggage before the plane sinks. Dixon and Gene also drop their weapons, making it easier for them to swim away, but Tony gets trapped in his weapon. After some struggle, they manage to inflate the raft, although it goes upside down. By tying their life jackets together and throwing them over the raft, they create a handle that allows them to pull and turn the raft, so that they can eventually board it. Now they just have to wait to meet. The next morning, Dixon and Gene exchange a few words over what happened, with each man indirectly accusing the other of having done something wrong. Seeing that such talk is getting them nowhere, they decide to keep watch, and remain alert in case the plane approaches. Turns out they're lucky, and a few hours later a plane flies nearby, but doesn't get close enough to see them, even when they take off their shirts, and wave them around while yelling. But soon, the plane leaves, and Dixon explains that this was their only chance. The plane was on a box search, and would not break away. It would put them in danger of going into enemy territory. The war is more important than 3 soldiers. The process says they just get a quick look. Thinking about their survival, Dixon announces that the fleet is a U.S. Navy ship and he is its captain, so Tony and Gene will follow his orders. They take inventory of the things in their pockets, but it's not much, mostly tools and random things, like wires, and an empty water bag. Gene also has a knife, so Dixon orders him to put it in his pocket to avoid the risk of cutting the raft. To protect the raft and prevent it from being damaged, Dixon also orders them to take off their shoes, and throw them into the sea, but he does not throw his shoes, which upsets Gene. Hours and days pass, as the soldiers do their best not to let the isolation drive them crazy. They converse on various topics, sometimes even singing to entertain themselves. Tony obsessively cleans his gun, but also promises Gene that he will introduce him to his sister, as they would make a wonderful couple. The sun is scorching during the day, so they gradually lose each layer of clothing, causing blisters on their skin. The nights are cold, and when they sleep, they have nightmares about drowning, or guilt over the possible mistake that got them into this situation in the first place. The 3 of them do not sleep at the same time, as one is always awake, and they take turns keeping watch in case they find a plane or an island. During one of these watches, Dixon decided to relieve himself in his shoes, and drink his own urine to at least satisfy his thirst a little. One morning, when they feel a nice breeze moving the boat along, Dixon makes some calculations to have a vague idea of where they are heading. There's a chance they'll reach some islands, but it'll be weeks before that happens, so Gene decides he wants to try fishing to avoid starving to death. With some wire and cord, they make a hook that they throw into the sea, but whatever bites is strong. Tony has to help Gene pull back, and when they finally recover the end of the line, the hook is gone, reminding them there are some dangerous creatures out there. But Gene does not give up. He simply makes a new hook and throws it again, leaving it in the water as long as necessary. However, eventually, the heat gets to his nerves, so he dons a life jacket, and jumps overboard to freshen up. Tony wants to go after him, but Dixon says they should do it one by one for safety's sake. He also reminds them that there are sharks in this water, which scares Gene into swimming back to the boat, and dissuades Tony from jumping in the next time. As the days go by, tension grows between the men, and Dixon's paranoia leads him to keep asking his men what happened on the plane, as if he was trying to find someone to blame for his situation. Thirst is also starting to become a problem, and Tony thinks maybe he could at least take a sip of sea water, but Dixon stops him before he does anything stupid. Gene comments on how many more shoes they can fill with yellow stuff, when he is suddenly interrupted by Dixon shouting in triumph. He finds a pencil in his pocket, which he had ignored earlier. Now he can make a chart and keep track of the direction they are going. If they want to reach the island, they have to keep the wind in their favor. Using a life jacket, some rope, and some wire, they create a sea anchor. This way they can avoid being blown in the wrong direction if the wind changes direction. The second problem remains their thirst. Gene teaches the other 2 to pray to God for rain, but late at night the weather changes. Seeing this, they laugh in joy. The men collect as much rainwater as they can on their shirts and water bags. After a week of wandering, Gene finally tired of failing to catch anything with his hook, So he took out his knife, ignoring Dixon's protests and concern for the boat. After a few random stabs in the water, Gene is largely successful. He manages to kill a shark, which they bring to the boat, and opens it to eat the small fish it had recently eaten. They save shark meat in their socks to use as bait later. However, their little dinner has some serious consequences. As they keep throwing shark blood into the ocean to keep the raft clean, other sharks have smelled it, and are now chasing them. So when one night, a sleepy Gene gets distracted and puts his hand in the water, he is bitten. Luckily, he gets it out before he loses it, and Dixon wraps it with Tony's bandana, but the damage is done. 2 weeks have passed since the accident, and although they haven't found another fish like the shark, they have found another day of rain to refill their water bag. It's starting to become difficult to maintain hope, and Tony begins looking at his gun with some depressing thoughts in mind. Gene takes it from him just in time for a bird to land on their raft, and shoot it, causing the body to fall into the sea. Dixon wastes no time in jumping in to retrieve it, but the bird's blood has attracted the shark's attention as well. The boys try to shoot at him, but the gun jams, so Dixon has no choice but to swim as fast as he can. Fortunately, he makes it back to the boat before he is captured, and now they have bird meat to eat, which tastes like chicken to Dixon. Since the gun can no longer be used, Tony throws the bullets into the ocean, saddened by what could be considered a sign of defeat. On the morning of the 20th day, Dixon woke up and found that all 3 of them were sleeping, so there's been no watch. Gene thinks it's not worth the trouble. It's been 2 days with no wind, and the islands aren't getting any closer. He calls Dixon for his map, not understanding how he could calculate their position, if their plane was lost, and he didn't even know what their starting point was. He also thinks it is Dixon's fault that the planes were lost, because somehow he flew them out of range. After much arguing and yelling, Dixon admits that he was hoping to see the islands a few days earlier, so yes, their way is off. Eventually his memory awakens, and he remembers what happened on the plane. Actually, he had fallen asleep. It was only a few minutes, but still enough to miss his turn. He apologizes for his mistake, knowing that he will never be able to make up for it. A depressing mood falls on the raft, so trying to make things better, Gene picks up the chart and says, although it may not be perfect, it is their only hope of returning home. When Tony jokes about generating their own wind, Dixon gets an idea. Using Gene's knife, he cuts the soles of their shoes, which they use to propel the boat. A month after the incident, they finally get some rain again. Except this isn't your average rain, this is a full-blown storm that includes lightning. The waves become high and aggressive, and eventually capsize the boat. The men fall overboard and lose some of their equipment, including rowing shoes, but the raft is more important. They find each other by holding onto it, and together with the help of the wind, they flip the raft back on position before climbing on it, huddling close for warmth until the storm passes. The rain is gone in the morning, but the men are too tired to do anything else other than laying down. Having lost all hope, their conversation turns depressing. They discuss what to do with the body. If one of them dies, since it could be food, remember the people at home that believe them to be dead, and make Dixon cry, when Tony and Jen say they wouldn't have sent him to court-martial for his mistake. Tired of this somber mood and, thinking they've come too far to give up now, Tony convinces his friends to row with their hands to at least go down trying. This tires them out so much that Dixon does what he said they wouldn't, which is drinking seawater, and Tony falls asleep, so deeply that for a moment they believe him to be dead. Suddenly, Gene sits up when he sees something green in the distance. They've finally found an island. Desperate enough not to care if it's taken by the enemy, and with tears in their eyes, the men begin rowing with their hands, until they reach the shore waves, that push them the last stretch of the way onto the beach. The 3 of them land on the sand safely, and as soon as they see 2 shacks nearby, they make their way there on shaky legs. This landing takes place on the 20th of February, after they have been lost at sea 34 days, and have driven their fleet for more than 1,000 miles. After their rescue, Dixon was awarded the Navy Cross for leading his crew to safety, but he never flew another combat mission. Due to his injuries, Tony could not pursue a career in the Navy as he wanted, and when he died in 1986, his ashes were scattered over the ocean. Gene takes part in the war as a radio man, and in 1946, he marries Tony's sister. Thanks so much for watching. Let us know your thoughts on the film in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and also watch some of our other videos. And before you go, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps.